Since February 2018, the crack team consisting of an old hipster, a rookie, and Tyrod Taylor's biggest fan record from a secret location in the heart of Scotland. Their aim is to try and dissect all things NFL. If you want their opinion, and if you can find them, this is the American Fitbaw Cast.
Welcome to the 35th episode of the American Fitbaw Cast, and it's a special one we've got for you today. As ever, I'm joined by my usual co-hosts, Gav and Steve, but alongside them, dialing in all the way from Hawaii, we're delighted to have on the line Jeff Reinebold. Jeff, how are you?
I'm awesome, fellas. I just got out of my hot yoga class, so I was afraid. Actually, I was afraid it was going to run long and I'd miss you, but she let us out just in time.
Fantastic. Well, we would have waited forever for you, to be honest, mate. Fantastic. So you're, as I say, you're in Hawaii at the moment. So just out of your yoga class, what does the rest of the day look like for you?
Well, today's kind of a busy one because we're going to go look at a house today. I may buy a house here on Kauai. So it's a big day, and then we're going to get in the water. There's hula classes for my wife, and I'm going to play a little ukulele. So living the Hawaiian lifestyle right now.
Oh, fantastic. It sounds brilliant. Much better than cold, dark Scotland like just now. But
I was watching a show about the English royalty. It's called Tudors.
Uh-huh.
And every day was a sunny day back in England. Back in those days, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, they're a bit further south than us. Right, I'm going to open in with a couple of questions for you on Scotland's links to the NFL. See how much you know.
Uh-huh.
So first up, obviously you spent a lot of time in NFL Europe, and in 1995 you were with Rhein Fire. Their opening game of the season was on the road at the Scottish Claymores. Can you remember the name of the stadium that game was played at?
Murrayfield?
It was spot on.
Well done.
Awesome.
And I can remember how that game ended too, because it was kind of a crazy game. That, if you remember, the original coach, Larry Kuharek of the Claymores, fired all the national players. He cut all the national players right before the end of training camp so that he could keep the Americans around for one more week. And then he sent them all home. And then when he came, he brought them back once he got back home, which was against the spirit of the rules. He was smart. I mean, he's playing the gray area of the rules. But then he got involved in all kinds of crazy stuff back there. And so the NFL sent a guy over to see what was going on. And the first thing he sees when he lands at the airport is Doug Williams, who was the quarterback coach at that time, with his bags. And he said, Doug, where are you going? He said, I'm getting out of here. This guy's crazy. And they fired him and hired the offensive line coach, who was Jim Kreiner, and the rest is history.
Oh, brilliant.
Is that the same Doug Williams that was is now is he the head of personnel for the Washington Redskins now? Is that the same Doug Williams?
Yep.
Wow.
That very Doug Williams that was a Super Bowl, or not a Super Bowl, but I guess he was a Super Bowl quarterback for the Redskins. He played for Tampa Bay and out of Grambling, was one of the best small college quarterbacks ever, and had a great NFL career. He's now the I think vice president or president of the Redskins.
That's awesome. It's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Awesome. Right, the next question we've got for you, which I think will be an easy one for you. There's been two Scottish players that have played in the NFL over the past 10 or 15 years. What position did they both play at, and who were they?
Well, one of them was a wide receiver named Scott McCready that played for the Patriots, and good player. I mean, he was a really, really good inside receiver, tough, could run a little bit, sneaky quick, not real big, but a little bit like Julian Edelman, frankly. Maybe not as got the short burst quickness that Edelman has, but that kind of guy. And then I apologize for all these trucks, guys. We're right on the
That's quite all right.
We're right on the highway to Port Food. So, and then a kicker that if I remember correctly, he kicked at Troy as a college player, and then I was in Kansas City for training camp in 2001, and he came in and we tried to get him to win the job, and Todd Peterson was our kicker in Kansas City at the time, and Todd had gotten to the point where he couldn't kick off anymore, so we bring in this young kid named Tynes in from Troy, and at that time I didn't know he was Scottish, but he was born in Scotland, and he didn't make our team, but he went back and kicked in NFL Europe, kicked in the Canadian League, and then finally got a chance and made it, and was a Super Bowl champion with the Giants. So those are two pretty good players.
Yeah, and then obviously we've got Graham Gano at the Panthers these days as well, is Scottish as well.
Yep. So you got three, and I think that's amazing. It's really a credit. It's a shame that the league folded when it did, because the pipeline was just starting to fill up with young, talented European kids. We actually had, I think, over 24 guys on practice rosters from around the world on NFL practice rosters, and then the league felt like they wanted to go another direction. Well, lo and behold, here they go. They're starting a pathway program again, and I think one of the things that you can say was without a doubt successful was player development in NFL Europe, whether it was NFL players that needed time, like Kurt Warner and Nick Ferguson, who had played 9 years and had a great NFL career. At one point, I had 5 different safeties that I had coached at the Rheinfire or Amsterdam who were playing in the NFL. So it developed players. It gave guys a chance to play who needed to play, and then it also saved the NFL money in the long run, because there were guys that would come through the league that had been first-round draft choices, and Achilles Smith is a name that you guys might remember, who was a first-round pick of the Bengals, and they eventually sent him to NFL Europe to finally prove that he couldn't play. And when you do that, what you end up doing is saving yourself you save yourself a whole bunch of money on the other end, instead of paying a guy like you look at Geno Smith, for example, now. Geno Smith isn't good enough to play in the NFL. I mean, he might back up in the NFL, but he's not a starter in the NFL. And in NFL Europe, a guy like that would come over and get exposed, and you would realize that you made a mistake, cut your losses and move on, instead of hanging him, having him. Worst thing about a backup quarterback is they never get a chance to prove they can or they can't, because they don't get any reps. And so, you may pay a guy $3 or $4 or $5 million a year that's not good enough, and you can't find out if he's not good enough because he doesn't get enough reps in training camp or during the season.
Jeff, just out of curiosity, how do you think if they were to bring back an NFL Europe, how do you think it would go down now versus what it was back then?
Well, I think it would be obviously, better attended now than it was back then. Again, I think there are a lot of things about that, and I've had guys ask me actually to write a book about it, because I think there's an awful lot that we could have looked back now on and learned from. We made some tactical errors. The thing that we I think, and again, I say this with no malice in my heart. We were just in a lot of cases we were making decisions as arrogant Americans, and just thinking that well, we're the NFL and we're going to come in and everybody's going to fall in love with us. And I think what we found out is you can't do it that way. You have to have a presence all year long in the marketplace. You can't come in April and leave in June and think that the fans. It's too competitive for the sports dollar today, and it's not a sport that is indigenous to the country. So if you were talking about rugby, maybe you could do that in Scotland, but you can't do it with American football because you got to constantly grow the game and grow the sport and grow your business. And I think that was one of the big mistakes we made. And then, I can remember, guys, when we played the World Bowl in 2000, I don't know, you couldn't have got another German in Wall Stadium with a hand grenade. I mean, that place was packed. And, so there are a lot of good memories about that league. A lot of real positive things happened, and I think it laid a groundwork and started some fans off in the game that are still passionate today about the NFL. And it's interesting. Every time I go to a Super Bowl or I go to a game in London, I still see Claymore jerseys around. I still see those cheese heads, and I'm not talking about Green Bay cheese heads. I'm talking about the Scottish variety.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So obviously the growth of the game that's happened, I suppose it's exploded over the last few years, particularly with the London games. I saw you were quoted by Odds Checker recently saying that you expect that the UK will have an NFL franchise within the next couple of years. What team do you think's likely to make the jump, or do you think that's going to be part of potentially an expansion?
No, I don't. I don't think expansion is going to happen for a while. The NFL's got some things on its menu that's got to take care of. They've got a collective bargaining agreement coming up again. Nothing will get done on expansion until they can get that iced out. I think there are a lot of things with the power of the commissioner and other things that are going to be priority issues for the league before you start talking about expansion. What I do believe is that a franchise will relocate to London. I really have thought that the Raiders might do it for a year just as a test balloon, and that the league would urge them to do it so that they could see if they would be able to sustain a crowd over that time and all that. But again, the Raiders did the opposite the other day. They went, as they always do. They went and upped the lease for one more season or possibly two more seasons at the Coliseum in Oakland. So, I think it's going to be a team. I would say if you ask me right now who the teams are that might, I think Jacksonville's a candidate. When you look around the league and you see people who have empty seats in their stadiums, and I'm not talking about no-shows. I'm talking about where you don't sell out the stadium. Those are the teams that are prospective of coming to the UK because it's a business decision, and the bottom line is you got a chance to put 80,000 people in Wembley, or you got a chance to put 42,000 in the stadium in Jacksonville. That just doesn't make good business sense.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think obviously the Jags do look the obvious candidate. They're here every year and have been for a few years now, as well. Let's talk a little bit about yourself and your coaching career. You've mainly been in Canada, through obviously Europe as well. So the Canadian League, in comparison with the NFL, it's not something that we find easy to manage to get hold of the games over here, to be honest. How do you feel that compares to the NFL in terms of quality, the drama, and how the fans interact with the game in Canada?
Well, it's really totally different. And the thing that people have to understand that our game is a different game. Our game has been around we've had over 105 championship games. What to us, the Super Bowl is the end all be all for the National Football League. In the Canadian Football League, it's the Grey Cup. And there have been over 105 Grey Cups. It's the oldest professional sports league in the world. It is deeply, deeply embedded in the fiber and the roots of the country. It has a unique rule structure all to itself. There are more ways to score in the Canadian League than there are in the National Football League. So many of the things that are, quote, cutting edge, the RPOs and all that stuff that the NFL coaches are talking about all the time. Shoot, we've seen those in the Canadian League for 15 years. It was a league that was really, really proactive in allowing African-American players an opportunity to play professionally. The first black players in professional football were in the Canadian League. You're talking about developing quarterbacks, guys, Warren Moon, who's a Hall of Famer at the University, comes out of the University of Washington after taking his team to the Rose Bowl. He can't get an opportunity to play in the National Football League. So what's he do? He has to come to Canada. He plays in Edmonton and wins 4 Grey Cups in a row. And the next thing you know, he's down in Houston slinging touchdown passes, and the rest is history. So it's a fantastic league. I would venture to say to you that if you took particularly European fans and you made it generic in terms of the production of the game, the broadcast of the game, the uniform, all of it, and you just went to a pub and put the NFL game on one TV and the CFL game on the other TV, 80% of the guys in the pub will be watching the CFL game within 15 minutes. It's a dynamic, wide open, fast game. We have one less down in a series. So when you go out there on defense, it's 2nd and 10, basically, right? Because we don't have first down. I mean, we have first down, but we don't have third down. Third down, you punt it. So obviously when it's like that, you're going to see the ball in the air very much more. It's a game for speed guys. It's not a game for big guys. There are numerous NFL players that have come up and just couldn't play on the field. The field's so big. It's 13 yards wider than an NFL field. It's 110 yards long, and the end zones are 20 yards deep. So if you're a corner, you can imagine playing the fade on the goal line. I mean, the goal line goes on forever. So, I mean, there are some really unique things to the game that make it special. I know you can get the games on BT Sport because ESPN carries every game in our league in America. And what's really interesting, our commissioner has just gone out and signed agreements with the Nordic countries, with Germany, with Mexico, with Italy, and I think the UK and Scotland are probably coming next to promote the game, to try and get our game on their television screens, inviting foreign players and indigenous players from their own area, like for example a kid from Germany, whatever, to training camp. We just drafted. We had a Mexican player draft this past spring, so we're the only league in the world that, aggressively tries to attract foreign players. So I think there are a lot of things that people just don't know about it. Here's the thing with our league. Our league has been, it's kind of the Canadian mindset. If you know very much about Canada and the Canadian people, they are extremely polite. They're very, very, very humble, and they don't like, they're not into showy and hey, look at me. Well, that's the American mindset, and that's why America markets so well, because they're constantly telling you how great they are. Well, in Canada, we haven't done that, and frankly, it's hurt our game. It's hurt the development of our game because people just don't know how good these players are until they see the game.
I think for listening to you speak about it, it does sound like it sounds a bit more fun, especially like it sounds like there's going to be more high scoring games, especially with the rules. And I think it's, being completely honest, I've never watched the game before, but I think going into the next season it's something that I'll definitely try and look out for.
Well, I remember, if you guys remember Dexter Manley, you remember the great player Dexter Manley for the Redskins? He's a Hall of Famer and defensive lineman. At the end of his career, Dexter came up and tried to play in the CFL. And he found out real fast about how different the game was. Because for a pass rusher, it's tough for you because you have to line up a yard off the ball. So you had a yard further to go to start with. And then we don't have a 45-second clock. We have a 20-second clock.
Wow.
And the clock doesn't stop. So, for example, if you throw an incomplete pass, as soon as the official spots the ball, the 20 seconds start again. So the game is way, way faster than the American game. I mean, it's 45 seconds. I mean, sometimes when I'm watching a game, an NFL game, you think that the guys in the huddle are, trying to find a curative for cancer, splitting the atoms. They're in there so long. And but in our game, you can't do that. You got to be on. You got to, once the ball's spotted, you got 20 seconds to get another play run. So it is really fast. And I remember, like I said, Dexter. We go up to Ottawa to play, and Dexter's out there, and Dexter, we get like 5 yards on first down and 7 yards on second down, and so it's a new set of downs. And Dexter's out there on the field tapping his helmet, which is the universal sign for "I'm tired, get me out of here." And the coaches on the sideline are, they're holding their hands up in a stop sign because, you don't got 53 guys. Our roster, our game day roster is 45, and at that time, our game day roster was 39. And so if you played 4-3, you'd have 4 starters and 2 backups, and that's all the D linemen you carry. So, it's a game for tough guys too. You've got to be able to run, you got to be tough, and you got to be able to play for, the entire game. It's not an easy game to play. You see the NFL kids, it happens to them every time they come up. The first game, they play, and it's like they go out and they cover a kickoff, and they play 2 downs of defense, and they're on the punt return team. Then the offense goes 2 and out, and they got to go out and play on the punt team. And after about the first 7 minutes, they come over and look at you, and their eyes are, like as big as quarters, and they're like, "Coach, what the hell is this?" And I said, "It's the game, man. You better get with it because that's the way the game goes."
Do you think that that's something that the NFL could maybe look to incorporate then if they're trying to make the game more exciting, or do you think the NFL's too stuck in its ways?
Well, I think the NFL has to look at the length of the game. Some of those games now are getting, crazy, and the more people throw the ball with the rule structure like they have, where the clock stops on an incompletion. Well, if you're throwing the ball 50 times a game, and the other team's throwing it 35 times a game, you just think about the clock stoppages there. So that is going to be a issue that I think they have to look at, and that would be one way to speed the game up. Now, the coaches are going to scream like crazy because they want those 45 seconds. But here's my deal. In the CFL, the average size of a coaching staff is 9. You look at some of the NFL staff, fellas, and they got 25, 26 guys on their staff. Well, if you can't manage the game with 26 coaches and you can't get a play in 45 seconds, then either there's some challenges. I mean, how in the world can you not, I just don't get it. So what I think the NFL really, and I give the NFL credit for a lot of things. They have really moved an awful lot in the last 10 or 15 years in terms of, how they approach the game, changing the rules to help the offense. A lot of really good stuff has been done, protecting the players, all of it. But I think there's still further to go. And, if they would just take a peek up north. Here's the thing, guys. The play that happened to New Orleans would have never happened in our league because that is a challengeable call by the coach. So in Sean Payton, his only recourse after they blew that call was just to run down the sideline and scream at the official.
Yeah. In
the Canadian League, that's a challengeable call, and it should be, because you think about it. Think about it, guys. There are guys that are playing on that Saints team that may be their one chance in their entire career to go to the Super Bowl. The one time that you can go. I got a kid. We have 5 kids that played for us at SMU that are on that Saints team. All right. Now, Tommy Morstead won a Super Bowl, with the Saints. Chris Banjo never has. Zach Line never has. Josh Rebus never has. Zach Wood never has. Those guys were that close to doing something that every kid who plays football dreams about. And to have it taken away by a blown call that you can't change is, to me, criminal.
Yeah, it's you can't argue with what you've just said there. There's nothing there and it makes no sense that it's not challengeable. Like you said, I can't understand any reason why you wouldn't make it challengeable.
Yeah, I think the NFL, it sounds like they are going to go down the route of making some of these calls challengeable. But I mean, I read recently that they're only going to look at making the calls where the flag has been thrown reviewable rather than. So that one still wouldn't have been reviewable based on what they're going to do?
Yeah, I just don't. I think they got to. I mean, now I will tell you this. We didn't do a great job. We have been really progressive with instant replay, right?
Yeah.
We have a guy that watches every play in Toronto, which is the command center in our league. And if he sees a blown call, he has the right to call the field official and change the call right there, right? All scoring plays are reviewable. All turnovers are reviewed. But here's where we went. We said, okay, let's make defensive pass interference a challengeable call and offensive pass interference a challengeable call, right? So now what happened, and again, this is one of the things that you got to grow through the things, right? What was happening was coaches should be like in the Secret Service somewhere, because they're always trying to find a way to to get to the gray area, right?
Yeah.
So what happened in our league, a touchdown would be scored, right? Or an interception, let's say, on defense would happen, and they would have a guy in the spotter's booth, and he would watch the replay, and he would look for a foul away from the ball, right? And because of the way the thing was worded the first year, we had some fishing expeditions going on during the game, right? And it ended up being a situation where we had to tighten the rule down and make it more if you challenge and you miss, you don't get the challenge, and you can't challenge away from the ball and some of those things, right? Because let's say there was pass interference or holding on the backside of a play, and it didn't affect the play. Well, that shouldn't change the outcome of the play.
Yeah, brilliant. One question about you. Obviously, looking back at your coaching career, you had 2 seasons as a head coach in 97 and 98. Otherwise, you've always been a positions coach or coordinator. Do you have any? Do you harbour any ambitions to have another crack at head coaching in the future?
I don't know. That's a tough question. It would be something that I would do if the situation was right. Here's what happened in my deal, right? And again, I'll be honest with you. I'm never going to tell you anything but what I believe is true. I was a young guy at that time who desperately wanted to have an opportunity to be a head coach. And so it was a tough job. And one of the reasons I got the job, now looking back on it, was I was willing to go in and, turn over the roster and do the things that we needed to do, because we had an old team that, was kind of like always, they're a little bit like the Dolphins. They were always right at the playoffs, sometimes in, sometimes not, but they were old and they had a bunch of expensive players. And I said, shoot, we'll come in here, we'll start fresh, we'll turn the roster over, we'll hustle. I was so full of myself, I thought all you got to do is work hard, and you're going to be successful, because that's all I'd ever known. That's how I was growing up. If you can outwork your problem. Well, you find out when you get to sit in that corner office, you can outwork your problems. Some of your problems, particularly if you don't have a quarterback. And we didn't have a quarterback, and when you don't have a quarterback, tough to win. And we didn't win enough, and then when you don't win enough, you get fired, and that's just the way it is. So looking back on it, there's a lot of things I would have changed. We did an awful lot of really good things, though, too, that I would certainly keep today. But, again, if it happens, it'd be awesome. If it doesn't happen, fellas, let me tell you something. Right now, I'm sitting outside, and it's about 24 degrees, and I'm going to go jump in the ocean here in a little bit and surf. And, so my life ain't real bad. You don't have to send me sympathy cards.
How long is your off season? How much downtime do you get, Jeff?
Well, we finish, our game ends November 20, I think it's Grey Cup's usually the third week in November. It's going to be a little earlier this year because they're moving the season back. We go to training camp in May, and then we play 18 games in our regular season and the playoffs. I am really fortunate that the people that I work for allow me to come and do my broadcasting with Sky. That could never happen in the National Football League. There is not a team in the league that would let an assistant or coordinator, go do television and be gone for that long. I can come home when I'm done with Sky. I can get on a plane and leave the Super Bowl, and the next day I'm in the water. And I don't have to come back until we get ready for training camp. So there's a lot of reasons why I like what I do. And people ask me all the time, well, wouldn't you want to go back and coach in the NFL? Yeah, for the money I would, certainly. If it was for the right guy, if it was the right environment. But, again, if I was I could not be sitting here right now talking to you. And, if I was coaching in the NFL, they wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, that's real.
See, here's the thing, guys. That stuff I do with Sky, that's not for money to me. That to me is all about paying back a game that's been extremely good to me, and in a part of the world where I have watched the game grow from nothing to 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium. I can remember going my first time I went to Scotland to work with the international players, and I think it was the East Kilbride Pirates or somebody like that. And we go out on a field and the grass is 6 inches long. It looks almost like they're going to cut hay. And, it's freezing cold. The rain's coming sideways. They don't have any equipment. They don't have lines on the field. They don't have a lot of things. But what they have was a group of kids and coaches that, loved it. I mean, they loved it. I don't know where they got their helmets from. I mean, it was all of the things that when this thing was getting started, Jesus, I remember seeing kids, where there weren't enough helmets on the team. And, if you were in this drill, you got to wear the helmet. And then when it was your turn, the guy took his off and gave you his. And so you'd have a helmet to wear. I mean, that kind of stuff, American kids you go back, and I tell our players this sometimes. I say, you guys are so freaking spoiled. You ought to see what it's like for those guys, across the way, and what they have to put up with, and what they have to do to play, and and so you fall in love with that. And if I can help, by broadcasting and help build the game that way, then certainly I'm going to continue to do it until Sky says they're not interested in having me back anymore.
I think we speak unanimously for the viewership of Sky when we say we hope that's not anytime soon, because we love having you on our TV. We think you're brilliant.
I think for me, just in terms of your analysis of the game, I think you make it really easy for us to understand, and easy for people new getting into the NFL, what it is that's actually happening, when it's actually quite a complex game in comparison to how our football works over here, and you can easily get lost in all the rules and everything that happens. So I think the stuff that you do for Sky is awesome.
You know what? I appreciate that very much, and that makes me feel good because that's the whole purpose. I really wish there was a way somehow, because I know I'm a nut bar when it comes to football, but the game is such a beautiful game, and there's so much that goes on during the course of a game that if the viewers knew or had a deeper appreciation for the game, they would love the game even more. I mean, it is really, really a fascinating chess match that goes on the field, and all of it is, I just wish we had more time to use the telestrator more and do some of those things that I think, and I've talked to the guys at Sky about this. I think our fan viewership now is educated to the point where they want more information, not more statistics. They want more how, why, this is what's going on kind of stuff.
Yeah, is that one of the major things that you've noticed then through the last particularly decade of the growth of the game in the UK? The fact that as a fan base, because we are so much knowledgeable, we can absorb that next level.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And what's interesting, guys, I've had the really good fortune to have brought over some guys that have played for me in the past. Like I said, Nick Ferguson has come over, and Emmanuel Sanders has come over, and Tommy Morstead has come over. And all of those guys, I tell them before they come, because they have no way of knowing. And especially if they've not played in the London game. And I said, guys, you're going to be shocked by two things. Number one, you're going to be shocked by the passion of the fans. And two, you're going to be shocked by the knowledge of the fans. And the questions you get are going to be every bit as, insightful or detailed or knowledgeable as if you were doing a fan event in Omaha, Nebraska, or, Sacramento, California, or Mobile, Alabama, or wherever in the United States. It's really, really, really fun to talk ball with the fans in the UK, because they really do understand the game. They do know the game very, very well now.
And I take it you'll notice that more with the NFL Live events that have happened over the last few years.
Yeah, I think it's because those NFL Live events give you an opportunity to be one-on-one, that TV doesn't allow. You can take a Twitter question, but when you're on television, you're speaking in, 1.5 minute sound bites, really. And when you're at an NFL Live event, you can really answer a question in detail, and the question can be in detail. It can be multi part question. So those fan events are awesome. And then I've started to do we call them tweet ups. I don't know what. There's a young guy named Tom Julian that works for Aston Villa Soccer Club, but he's a big NFL fan, and he and I have started to do these things where we get together in a pub somewhere in London and or in England someplace, and just say, hey, listen, we're gonna be there. If you want to come down and have a pint and talk ball, come on down. And it's been a huge success, and hopefully one day we'll be able to bring one to Scotland.
We'd be delighted, and we'd make every effort to be there.
We can host it. We'll find a pub near us. It's fine.
Hey, listen, but I'm gonna tell you something. I'm a lager man. I ain't doing any beer that's darker than gold, and I ain't doing any whiskey. So.
But when you're here, you've got to drink what the locals drink, have you not?
Well, I don't know. So I you know what? I walked down Sauchiehall Street on Sunday morning about 4 o'clock in the morning. Whatever those guys are drinking, I don't want anything of.
Yeah, we get that. So the next NFL UK live event, I think, are coming up in April, according to something Neil Reynolds put on Twitter not long ago. Are you over for that next set of events?
I don't really know, because again, it's all going to hinge on what my availability is with the league. Once I get to Canada, which is March 15th, it's a little tougher to get away. I certainly would come if I'm asked and I'm allowed to get out of there. But again, I get over there every chance I can, any way I can.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, hopefully we'll see you there next time round. Right, let's moving on to obviously the next big thing in the NFL calendar after free agency next week is the NFL draft coming up. I'd just be interested to know. Obviously, there's a few players that are projected to go at the top of the draft. Are getting a lot of attention from the media. But is there anyone that you've got your eye on that you think we could see as being stars in the NFL in 2019 that maybe aren't getting the same exposure as others at the moment?
Well, I think, you look at the draft, and I have started to look at the draft now, and what I see in this draft is a number of defensive players, particularly edge rushers, linebacker kind of guys, that I think can come in and make an impact right now in the National Football League. Nick Bosa, I think certainly it's going to be interesting to see how he does at the combine, but I think he's got every bit of as much skill as his brother, Joey. And there's a linebacker at Kentucky that can really run, and a lot of edge guys. Clemson's got an edge guy. Alabama's always got guys. There's a left tackle at Alabama, offensive tackle. I think is a really, really good player. He'll be a first-round draft pick. I'm not as infatuated with these quarterbacks as other people are, and not particularly Kyler Murray. Let me tell you something, guys. I had Doug Flutie, and I've been really fortunate enough to be around five and been on the team with five different Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, and Doug was an amazing player and did phenomenal things in the Canadian Football League. But the reality of it is, there has never been a 5'9" or 5'10" quarterback win at the highest level in the National Football League. It's just so hard. And I know he's tremendously talented. I know he's a great athlete. I know all those things. But have you ever seen Big 12 defense? I mean, that is those guys. I mean, they should be arrested for impersonating a defense. But they are terrible.
You were talking about that with Neil on Inside the Huddle. Was it last week episode? I think.
Yeah.
I
mean, they play one front and one coverage the entire game. I mean, to think that somebody's going to, and that's what makes what Mayfield did so impressive to me, is if you look at the year that all of the rookie quarterbacks had, I think he had the best year of any of them and has the highest upside. I thought that Rosen was the most NFL ready coming out, but he had no chance. I mean, he just got brutalized behind that bad offensive line.
Yeah.
So, I think when you play in the Big 12, you're going to put up numbers. So when you look at Kyler Murray's numbers, go out and look at the Alabama tape and see what he looked like when he was playing on the field with a bunch of guys that are going to play in the NFL. And he looked like he was confused and not scared, but he looked like he was a deer trying to cross, the M10 or whatever that thing is around London and at rush hour.
Can I just ask, on Kyler Murray specifically, do you think the threat of baseball with him would be enough to put you off versus taking, he's obviously got his height, but would you be looking to take someone that's maybe a little rough around the edges and not have that potential baseball problem?
I don't think the baseball thing wouldn't worry me, because if he makes his commitment to play, then, I think you got to be really clear with him. Like they let Russell Wilson play around with baseball, but they didn't let him play baseball. If he wanted to go during the off season to go to training camp and all that stuff, they allowed that to happen. But they didn't allow him to play baseball. He never was going to be in a, like Bo Jackson did, or, I think that particularly when you got a quarterback, you need to have him in your facility. You need to have him around your players, and then if he wants to go fool around and, go 2 weeks with the Seattle Seahawks for, that's just kind of, it's not a publicity stunt, but it's just, it really was never a serious baseball threat.
Yeah.
I think, I'll be honest with you, if I'm Kyler Murray and I'm drafted where he got drafted in baseball, you wouldn't see me around a football. I mean, baseball's got guaranteed contracts. Baseball gets paid way more money than football gets paid. You're not going to beat your body up. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I shake my head and go, what are you thinking? You're a 5'10" quarterback.
Can I just ask another question on a sort of quarterback situation? So I'm a Washington Redskins fan, and obviously Alex Smith went through a horrendous injury. Would you be more inclined to draft a quarterback or to look at free agency?
Well, I think the thing that is going to make in free agency makes it tough is, you know, those guys are expensive. You know, here's the thing about free agency, fellas, and you know, we talk about this on, you know, we do a series called State of the Franchise, and last week we were talking about the Jets and the Raiders. Well, the Raiders have $71 million, I think it is, for free agency, and all those draft picks, and the Jets have a bunch of money too. But think about it. When you have multiple needs like they have, let's say, for example, the Jets, they need a center. Well, there's one. Paradis is the only center that potentially is going to be that's any good that's going to be in free agency. Well, if you're the only, it's supply and demand economics. You know what I mean? Because he's going to be able to say to the Jets, "Yeah, I'll come, but you're going to really pay me."
Yeah.
And that's the scary part about free agency is when you're looking at quarterbacks, left tackles, offensive linemen that can play, they're going to be the most expensive guys. Now, the Jets also need help at pass rush. Well, there's a bunch of edge guys that are going to be coming out that are potential free agents. So you got to combine the draft and free agency to fill your needs. So, for example, let's just speak in hypotheticals. I wouldn't spend big money on an offensive lineman, particularly a center, and there isn't a tackle in this draft that I think is going to come free, or in this free agency that's going to come free that's any good. That's what you're looking for. Take the kid at Alabama with the third pick or whatever it is you got, the left tackle, and then help yourself at the other positions in free agency. So you got to blend what you do between free agency and the draft.
Yeah, I think it's especially where, you know, the cap space always changing. You seem to see these crazy numbers being paid to people that you think, even for us over here, we're like, why is he getting that sort of money? It's just crazy that how it gets thrown about.
You know what the answer to that is? Because he can.
Yeah, I definitely don't begrudge people getting paid.
It does. I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, and I'm gonna tell you something, guys. Think about this one. When they gave Kirk Cousins that guaranteed contract, the cat is out of the bag now.
Yeah,
because
total goalpost.
What's going to happen when you give one of those guaranteed contracts and the guy isn't what you wanted him to be, and now you're overpaying him and you're stuck for that whole thing. I mean, that's dangerous. I mean, that is really, really dangerous, and that's something that the NFL is you're going to have to deal with because basketball has it, hockey has it, and baseball has it, and the NFL players are all banging on that. You know, you think Le'Veon Bell's not going to get a guaranteed contract?
Yeah, he's going to get a stupid contract. You can just see it coming.
Yeah.
Where do you think he'll land?
Well, the team we were just talking about would make sense to me, the Jets, but, again, he's going to have to make a decision about, how important is winning to him. If he wants to go play in New York. New York's a destination franchise, right, for free agents because it's the bright lights, the big city, all that. But, you're going to play in the same division as the Patriots, which means you're probably never going to the playoffs. And you got a long way to go before you're any good anyway. So for a guy like Le'Veon Bell, who's, still young, but running backs have a shorter shelf life than anybody, if he wants to go win a championship, he's probably not thinking about the New York Jets.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think I'd love to see him in either Kansas or Indianapolis. I think would be my picks for him.
Yeah, I think Indianapolis would be a better fit. I just think that Kansas City. There's only one ball, man. They got a lot of guys that want it, and
they do.
They're a good football team. They're a good football team. Fellas, I have to run. I appreciate it. It has been an awesome experience.
Well, thank you very much. We've been delighted to have you on. From sending you a cheeky tweet during the Super Bowl, I didn't ever expect that you would actually come and speak to us. So we are hugely thankful for that. And it's been a pleasure.
Well, I tell you what, it's been truly my pleasure. And if you want to do it again, I'll be more than happy to do it again. And
fantastic. Awesome.
All right, guys. I appreciate it.
When you come to Scotland next time, we'll make sure we get you a pint of Tennent's. That's what we drink in Scotland.
All right,
that's
bring it on, baby. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Take care, brother.
All right, see ya. Aloha. Bye.
You've been listening to another great podcast from the Fair City Podcast Network, a group dedicated to connecting and developing podcasts. Check out fcpod.net for more great podcasts and content.